Are you looking to plan a trip to the Christmas markets but don't know where to begin? In this video, I'm going to guide you through the planning process and give you tips to help you on your way. In 2023, we visited 23 markets as a part of our 11-city trip through Europe in winter. I love planning these trips, and our Christmas adventure was nothing but exceptional. In this video, I'm going to share with you tips for planning and, of course, how to have the best on-the-ground experience while you are at the Christmas markets, what to expect if it is your very first time. You're probably thinking when I say best time to go to the markets, you go, Dirk, Erin, December before Christmas. But is it the best time to go? Did you know that there are some markets that open as early November? They're not very many, but there are a few. And then there are some that go till after Christmas. These are all things that you could possibly use to your advantage depending on where you want to go and how many markets you want to visit on your adventure. As I said, there are some markets that open as early November. Majority of markets start to open mid-November through to early December, and so you need to check with those local guides to find out which markets you want to visit are open when, so that all comes into play for you. Probably the busiest time to visit the markets is from early December through to Christmas, when a lot of people are in Christmas market mode. In saying that, while we were on our trip, we actually hit the Baltic capitals that week or so before Christmas, when probably the major markets were really heating up. We found that the Baltic markets still had a really relaxed atmosphere. We loved the Baltic capitals and their markets. Just recently I put together a video of our top 5 Central Europe markets, including the Baltic capitals. So if you want to have a look at that, links above or in the description below. On average, most markets open between 9 and 10 in the morning, sometimes as late as 11, and go through to 8 or 9 at night. Of course, as you get closer to Christmas, or if there are local holidays, you may need to check to see if they're extended or shortened due to a local holiday. We've all heard of the markets in Germany, Austria, and the Alsace region of France, and even Switzerland is getting a bit of popularity. But what are some of the most popular markets that you may want to consider visiting? Vienna is often thought of high up on most lists because it has what is considered the largest market in Europe at the Christkindl market at the Rathaus. There are over 20 markets in Vienna on its own. So if you just had to pick one city and you wanted to get a lot of different variety, for Vienna would be a great start. It has a lot of different feels for a lot of different markets. We visited 9 markets in 3 days, and we've got 3 videos on our Vienna market experience. Of course, if you want to stay in Austria, we've got Salzburg, got the German markets if you want that traditional market feel that I think a lot of people look for. When they think about the Christmas markets, it's often a German Christmas markets, or the Alsace region has a very similar feel. In the Alsace region, we've got Strasbourg, which is of course the home of Christmas, where they say the first Christmas market was officially held. You've got Colmar, and then you've got a whole lot of lovely little towns in there. You've got to remember that probably not far from these big markets, you're going to have smaller towns that are also going to have some sort of Christmas market in them majority of the time. From the Alsace region, let's move down quickly into Switzerland. In Switzerland, of course, you've got the Zurich Christmas markets, which is really popular, the Lucerne Christmas markets, and the Bren Christmas markets also get a whole lot of airtime, and it's very popular. That may be because it's close to the French border and easy to include in a trip if you're doing that Alsace region of France. A few other places that you will often find on a top Christmas markets to visit is the Budapest Christmas markets, Tallinn Christmas markets. We spent Christmas there and it was absolutely fantastic. You've got the Copenhagen Christmas markets, often centered around that Tivoli Gardens or amusement park area. Munich Christmas markets gets a big rap. They've got quite a few Christmas markets in and around their city as well. Staying in Germany, you've got Nuremberg, Rothenburg over Tauber. Cologne is another really big city, and you've got a few cities you can do around there. within easy transport, so you could base in one city and go and visit a couple of other cities and get different experiences. And of course we've got Prague, Helsinki. Krakow is getting quite a bit of a reputation in Poland, and coming up in the next little bit will be one of our favourite markets that we visited. There's a few more listed in our blog post of favourites, but let's move to the underrated markets. Some you may have heard of, some you may not have. Friends, I'm just going to read it off my computer, so just let me look down for a minute. Bruges in Belgium, Colmar in France, Gdansk in Poland, Wrocław in Poland, Riga in Latvia, Ljubljana, Slovenia, Vilnius, Zagreb in Croatia, Český Krumlov in the Czech Republic, Innsbruck in Austria, York, UK, Barcelona, Frankfurt, and I added Brno in the Czech Republic. These are places that still have markets worth going. They might not be quite as highly rated as those other markets we looked at before. Some of them you've probably heard of before, like Frankfurt and maybe Gdansk. Wrocław was my all-time favourite market of the 23 markets that we visited. Let's look at the 11 cities that we visited during our 32-day trip. We started our trip in Vienna in Austria before moving into the Czech Republic, where we went to Prague and Brno. From there we went into Poland and visited Zakopane, Krakow, Wrocław, Warsaw, and then we headed into the Baltic capitals, where we started in Vilnius in Lithuania, Riga in Latvia, Tallinn in Estonia, and we ended our trip in Helsinki after Christmas, so unfortunately we missed the markets there. Can I take a moment to invite you to subscribe to our channel and become part of the Sapphire Blue travel community? We love having new members as part of our community, and we look forward to seeing you in the comments below. First thing we want to do is we want to decide where and when we want to go and how long we want to go for, what our budget's going to look like. All of this stuff needs to be considered. For me, when we start planning, I'll throw a few questions at Phil. I am the principal planner, but I make sure that Phil is included in the conversations and in the way that we do things. So again, I'm going to look at my computer screen and I'm going to give you the questions that I've put in the blog post so that you may be able to use them later. Also, you can refer to the blog post to get them in writing. So as I said, how many days in total can you afford to have off that? So you need to include your transport there, transport between cities, and all of that within that picture. But how much is the maximum time that you can afford to have off? What do you want the focus to be on during your Christmas market visits? Is it about the food, decorations, the atmosphere, the rides? Of course, you know, you're going to take in the whole experience, but what is it that makes the visits to the markets unique and special for you? Is there a market that you would consider a must see? What is your preferred mode of transport if you are going to make it a multi-city itinerary? Is there anything on top of the markets that you desperately want to see if we go to a city? All of these are questions that help to paint a picture of what you want your whole trip to look like, so that when you sit down to nut out the finer details, you can pull it all together well. Taking the time to include your travel partners in this initial part of the planning can save some hassles coming up later on. If they know that they are being included and that you want their contribution, no matter how small it might be, it will make everything else feel more like teamwork. And of course, I've mentioned it briefly, but don't forget your budget. When I start looking at our budget and how much things are going to cost, I now use a website called Budget My Trip. And this website lets you bring up a city or a country if you're looking at doing multiple stops, and roughly how much it's going to cost for a day, a week, a month. You can even do it as a couple. It'll give you a amount that you're looking at for budget, medium and high end. I find that really invaluable as a great place to start to make sure I'm realistic, especially if we go and shop and shop and shop and shop. Something else to consider when you're looking at accommodation and the length of your trip and how much you want to do is what is realistic for you if you are going to do a multi-city trip. For us, we have a general rule of most stays are a minimum 2 night stay. 3 would be the ultimate of a small place that we would like to stay. So we've got 2 full days to explore on the ground. What is going to be a realistic option for you? What is everybody in your party happy to do? Are 2 and 3 night stays enough? Are they happy to do 1 night stays and change all the time? Would they prefer to be based in one city and do day trips from there rather than changing hotels all the time or changing accommodation? What style of accommodation do you want? All of those sorts of things come into play to help make your trip the best that it can be. Everywhere on the net these days there are things about packing light and how you should pack light and things like that. I'm actually a proponent of someone who is trying to learn how to pack light. We've done it a couple of times. We didn't do it as well with our Christmas trip, but we learned a lot of lessons that helped us to change our mindset on that in this trip. We didn't go overboard with what we packed, but we did pack more than what we needed. We've got a video on our YouTube channel and a blog post about packing lighter than we did and what we would do next time we packed. We learned lots of lessons on this trip, and sometimes that's what travel is about, isn't it? It's about learning lessons so that next time we do a trip anywhere, we can do it a little bit better and with a little bit more confidence than we had on the last trip. So traveling light, especially if you are going to multiple destinations, is a good idea. At least traveling as light as you can, because you don't want to be carrying big massive suitcases up narrow stairs or dragging them along cobble streets and trying to lift them on and off trains and buses. And if the lighter you can travel, the more enjoyable that part of your trip will be, or the less stressful that part of your trip will be. Layers are really, really important, and if you've got a really good outer layer, and I would spend the money on an outer layer, what you wear underneath, yes, needs to be warm but doesn't need to be heavy and thick. You can get away with, a good woolen base layer shirt or a thermal shirt and then some sort of jumper. The other thing to consider as far as those outer layers is good shoes. So have good waterproof shoes. We were expecting a little bit of snow. We got a lot of snow on our trip, and we were very appreciative of the fact that we knew that our shoes were not going to get wet. As I said, we've got a blog post on the mistakes we made, the lessons we learnt, and what we would take next time we were to go to Europe in Christmas. So let's look at some of the tips that we picked up on our 23 market visit. One of the things that we did was we created a treasure hunt. It didn't work on video, but for us it worked really well, where we had 5 items in each city that we were keeping an eye out for. There were a couple of random ones in there that sort of made it quite interesting, and they actually were probably some of the ones that helped us go a little bit deeper and stop us from getting bored. There were local foods, local drinks to try, and some of those pushed us outside of our comfort zone as well. It was a really good way to get out of that same mentality as we went through. So some tips for visiting the markets. I'd visit the really big markets midweek, and I would do your major shop and window shopping and all of that during the day. And if you go earlier in the day, especially to the really big markets, the crowds might not be quite so intense. And then go back at night and you get that atmosphere of the bigger crowd and the light. It's lovely seeing those two juxtapositions of the night and day, literally. On that visiting big markets midweek, we had a couple of instances where we would go to a market on a Thursday night and then go on the Friday night, and the crowd numbers were incredibly higher on Friday. So Wrocław Thursday was quite pleasant. Then by Friday early evening the numbers had swelled and you sort of were jostling to get through places and to get to stalls. So that's something considering. If you're visiting a destination you've never been to before, leave room in your time there to do some exploring of the city. Even possibly looking at day trips, if you can extend it to a couple of days extra stay in that destination, just so that when you come home you're not just talking about the amazing Christmas markets, but you're also got memories of that destination. Okay, let's look at some of the things that you can expect at a Christmas market. A lot of places, they still say cash is king, and there are some places where it is advisable to take some cash, to always have local currency on you, especially with small vendors. They may not necessarily have FPOS or cart tap facilities. We were surprised at the amount that did. There were a lot that did, but there was still some that didn't. So cash is still a safe option to have on you. The other thing too is at the markets, don't expect a lot of seating. If you're going to pick up some food or you just want to have a chill for a moment, we found seating very, very rare. They've got places where you can maybe perch as you eat or drink, or put your food down while you're having a stew or something, but not a lot of places had seating. We found them very few and far between. If you are looking to collect Christmas mugs, don't expect them at every market. So we got this one in Wrocław, and basically we saw them in Vienna at not every market, but most markets. These cups, if you don't know, you get a drink in them. They're probably €8, €5-6 for a mulled wine or a hot chocolate or some other local delicacy, and you can take the cup home like I did with this one, or you can return it to the vendor or to a special returning place and you get a deposit back. They're not everywhere, but they are in some places, and you might, if this is something that you're interested in, check before you go. Other places had these cups which worked on the same principle. So we had some places where these were the mugs and other places where you just got disposable cups. A couple of other things to consider is, as I said, Vienna has over 20 markets. Prague, we went to technically 4 markets, but 3 of them were of decent size. Krakow, we saw 2. Wrocław actually technically has 4, but they all run into each other, so it feels like one massive market. So you want to check the local town websites to see how many markets there are, their operating times, their closing times, the length of their season. There's so much information you can get from local markets. People like me, can't guarantee that our information is completely up to date every year, especially if the blog post could be a couple of years old. As I've mentioned a couple of times, part of planning for a trip is packing for a trip. And if you want to see the lessons that we learned, the mistakes that we made, and what we would do next time, check out this video here where I share with you all of that and a little bit more. Thanks for joining us. Travel brilliantly. Bye.